Hello, welcome to the Quad
Won't you lend your lungs to me?
Podcast.
Mine are collapsing. Plant my feet and bitterly breathe up the time that's passed. Breath I'll take and breath I'll give. Pray the day's not poised. Stand among the ones that live in lonely indecision.
All right, good morning, James.
Good morning, Lynn.
Today is August 7th, and this is episode 44 of the Crackpot Podcast with LaFond and Lockhart. I was able to determine how many episodes we have done. I went through my files and carefully counted, and now I can say what number we're on again.
It boggles my mind. So, congratulations. You've got more FaceTime out of me than anybody I've been married to has.
This is work, though. You're good at working.
We were supposed to have a discussion with the con today, but I've been digging ditches again up in the Rocky Mountains, and it seems that my obnoxious, ancient, illustrious alter ego refuses to materialize in a slave body. The English part of me just drives him away as soon as I start to work, so we've got to get the Irish quarter in here somehow for me to even make the connection. I do believe that the connection actually flows through the Irish.
Through the Irish
my
genes.
Yeah.
Well, that's, the ancient Celtic, ancient European, pre-Aryan kind of genes. Maybe that's what he needs.
Yeah, so I guess there were some comments people left.
There was a comment, very nice comment on the blog spot regarding the last Crackpot podcast that we aired. A fellow is reading Masculine Axis, and he comments that he's never read anything quite like it. People farming, temporary families, your take on superhero movies. God, I hate that childish crap. Me too. And what civilization truly means. I'm about halfway done, but one of these days I'd like to hear your take on some similar topics. Who knows, you might have already covered them in one of your books. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy your time. Thanks for the interesting conversations. That was from Henry. Thank you for listening and commenting, Henry.
Wow, Henry, thank you. Well, hopefully I've already written about these other topics, so I won't have to do any work to answer the questions. But I remember when I bought this house in Northeast Baltimore, I was just looking for a home for my family. And, I just knew that being a low-income guy, renting was eventually going to put me in a very bad spot. So I borrowed some money from my employer to, just to pay the closing costs on this thing. And after the deal was done and we were walking out, the realtor, who was, middle-aged, confident, alpha male type of guy, he told me, he said, well, you're a hardworking guy, so this isn't the perfect house, but you're going to be getting into a new house every 5 to 8 years. I mean, that's just the way it's done. Just don't worry if it's not the perfect neighborhood. And I said something to him to the effect that, well, I didn't plan on buying another house. I mean, I was looking for a home. He just gave me, he kind of dismissed me with a look. He was polite enough not to shake his head, but I realized, 12 years later, what he was talking about was that the way the criminal population is forcibly moved around, and this isn't doing them any favors. Okay, this is really evicting them from where they live, and then using them to attack other people to get them to move. I ended up running into that, and I had to walk away from that house. I remember I could no longer afford to send. After I got injured, I couldn't afford to send my son to a private school. So I had to find a rental in the county because the city schools, we already essentially lost one son there. I had to export him to a different municipality for his survival because the schools were so violent. for a year, I used to go back every Wednesday. It was the only day I didn't have two jobs. I didn't have a day job on Wednesday. I used to go back every Wednesday and just check the house and make sure that it wasn't flooding, that no homeless people had broken in, because it was attached. It was a duplex. So it's attached to my neighbor's house. And I didn't want anything that would happen in the house I was leaving vacant to affect him. And I would sit there in the furniture that I couldn't afford to move, because I could only get this little van to move in, and just sit there and contemplate things. And it really became apparent to me then that, our society was set up to encourage people with money to migrate regularly enough that their children would never grow up in a neighborhood full of other children that they knew, that they would be in a new child group every 5 years, and that poor people would be forced to move or get their families ripped apart due to the drug war or the criminal justice system or whatever. And it's been interesting since I've been out west. I have seen, I'm in places where the guys grew up, the guys from around here, they actually hunted to eat and they worked on farms. And you had towns that maybe only had 50 or 100 houses in them. And the other people that I've met out here were like your survival-minded types who wanted to move to get as far away from possible from all that stuff that I came from. Well, it's here. It's coming. I'm walking all through this one valley in the Rocky Mountains. There's for sale signs everywhere, not because anything's bad. It's like a paradise. It's because people have bought land on speculation after the housing crash in 2008, and now the real estate is up, so they're just selling it. And the people that are coming in are people from Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Manhattan, Washington, D.C. Top-rung people, millionaires and billionaires.
It's very interesting because you described urban blight, how urban blight ruined your chance at making a home and a family. Well, in my neighborhood in my life, it's been the opposite. It's not even gentrification. It's the absolutely astronomical inflation of real estate prices, so that you can never afford to buy a home near where you grew up, near where your parents might still live, or your parents would cash in and buy a $100,000 RV and just take right off into the sunset like boomers, and while their kids rent rooms and just barely scrape by.
When I was in Jersey, the Sopranos, they were only one of three houses in this mid-sized town that Manny knew of that were people who grew up there. He is actually a couple blocks from where he grew up. And there's hardly anybody in that town. In fact, there's hardly anybody in the town that's American, okay, at this point. But it's either done with the real estate on the high end or on the low end. It's done by moving the criminals in and literally chasing you out. And then you have to become a renter in one of these other areas that is getting hit with the inflated real estate prices. So it's like this economic
warfare.
Nomads. Yeah, at least nomads, the families stayed together.
Right.
Traveled around together. But this is like this, fractured economic nomadism where it's just designed to break the families up. And the more I read on these points, I've read 5 books, 3 of them primary sources in the past 2 weeks on Plantation America. And what went on in Pennsylvania was even more horrific than what went on in Virginia and Maryland. And every law was designed to separate the child from the parent. Now, it was just, they would get families to pay to immigrate to Philadelphia, and then they made the conditions so horrific that 50% of the people died. These were German immigrants. And if your wife died on the passage, you had to serve out time equal to the time she would have had to serve, because the ship's captains would, if you would give them your money, they would steal it from you. If you didn't give them your money, you would have to spend it just to eat, because they fed you moldy water with worms in it, and 5 to 10-year-old moldy biscuits with spider nests and stuff in it. And that's basically what you ate for 2 to 3 months as you crossed the Atlantic. So half these people die, and on the Mayflower, you had one person die. I don't think anybody died on the first Jamestown expedition. This was 150 years before this, when you had smaller, more primitive ships. Nobody died on a Roanoke expedition in passage going across. Nobody's starving to death. But 150 years later, in 1750, they have arranged the shipping so that half of the passengers are dying when they're coming from Amsterdam and Rotterdam to Philadelphia, which puts all of their surviving family members in debt, and they have to sell themselves into slavery. Well, if you manage to get yourself free, there's all these laws that encourage you to sell your children. There was a law that you would be fined a year's worth of labor for using a cuss word in Philadelphia. And there was no trial to see if you were guilty. You were guilty as accused. If anybody said, Lynn, you were swearing, okay, and you're taken, the constable comes and gets you, and he takes you before the judge, you might have to sit in prison for as long as 3 months. Okay, it depends on when the judges were sitting, and because it was a quarterly court. And the only thing the judge was concerned about is, did you have any money? Did you have any auctional possessions? Did you have any children? So if your neighbor, and if you lived in old Philadelphia and your neighbor went to the judge and said, I caught Lynn cussing, then all he would want to know is, could he auction off your house? Could he sell your children? And if you don't have any children, are you young and fit enough to be sold yourself? Okay, so, I mean, this is, and I'm finding this in every province of English North America before the Revolution, where it's a system for trafficking in children. And they were busting up families as much as possible. I mean, it was actually worse among Caucasian immigrants than what we're told it was among Africans. It was also worse among the Africans than what most historians admit that it was. The whole system was designed to break up families because they didn't want any cohesion in the servile population. They wanted to become wedded to their family.
It's very interesting because the English are sort of obsessed with their own genealogy, especially in the nobility. You know, you have hundreds of years of ancestors. You take pride in their existence and their knowledge. This is an old family, something like that. So they know that a family is a source of power, and you have to fight it and your enemies.
And they knew how fragile the family was. Barbara Tuchman wrote an excellent book. Well, every book she wrote was excellent, but A Distant Mirror was about the 100 Years' War. She was not able to trace a French noble family outside of the royal house that was able to maintain its surname for 200 years. Even the best families in France became extinct in 200 years. And their lifestyle was dedicated to perpetuating their family line. So nobility knows better than anybody how fragile a family is and how hard it is for that family structure to survive in a nation state down through the generations. So it's curious that these people, hell, we're even obsessed with British genealogy. These people obsessed with their own genealogy, the system that they presided over, was dedicated to the destruction of the English family and the families of the subject populations like the Scottish, the Welsh, the Irish.
Temporary families. It's
a no-brainer after a while living in a place like Baltimore that the current system is like that, and you think that something just went wrong with it and it's not right and you can fix it. But the more I read into the real history of this septic nation, I can see that it was basically founded that way. And the people that had a real strong family identity were the American Indians. By the way, the Gottlieb Middleburger claimed that the Delaware and Susquehannock Indians of Pennsylvania were yellowish or dark brown, but this was because they besmeared and stained themselves. He said when they were born, they were as white as we are. And also, rereading the Jonathan Smith's chronicles about the Jamestown expedition, the first thing the English did when they went on these exploratory expeditions is they took these boys who had been sold by their parents to the leaders of the expedition. And the parents sell these boys to somebody like John Smith. A guy named Henry Spellman was sold to John Smith. John Smith sold him to Powhatan as a slave. Powhatan adopted him and was offended when Jonathan Smith wanted him back as part of negotiations, because to Powhatan, this was now a member of his family. But the English had no such conception of family in that respect. The only family ties that they respected were the product of Powhatan, one of the many daughters of Powhatan, Pocahontas. When she married Rolfe, they really were hoping that was going to form a Virginia royal line that was going to be connected to Britain and bring more territory under British control. And later times, during Bacon's Rebellion, there was a white Indian queen of the Pamunkey people that the English king was very concerned about her well-being. She was married to a guy named West, and her sign was a W whenever she signed her name. And her son was also named West, and he was regarded as an Indian, even though he appeared to be a white man. They called himself West. So George Sandy's brother describes the new servants immediately running for the woods to try to join the Indians. Yeah, I mean, this was even known in England, that the Indians actually had families and they knew how to survive in Virginia, where most of the Virginians actually starved to death. And the first thing these servants would do would be try to get to the Indians. It was just really crazy. So to find all this stuff and tie it together with the Harm City situation. Okay, so sorry about going on a rant.
No, not at all. I think that was really helpful. Very interesting. Oh, I'll tell you what I have been working on, and you can tell me what you've been working on. How about that?
Okay. In the meantime, I'm so depressed about listening to myself. I thought I'd try to summon the con, even though it's still in the AM. This is called Chippewa Vida y Placer. Oh, this is Spanish, so I'm sure I'm pronouncing everything right. Grand Cafe Liqueur. Coffee. I think it's rum and coffee. So
that sounds good.
I'm having this for breakfast, okay?
I'm just having regular coffee. I wish I was having some of that. All right, we'll toast here. Oh my God, you're chugging it. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of, yeah, thank you.
Slow down. Oh my God. Okay. Careful.
Yeah, well, what's up?
Well, I've been working on the Violence Project.
Oh, great. Which
is very good. And I think we're going to make it available through Crackpot Books.
That sounds great. The never before published books that I wrote in 1998 and 1999 with some addenda.
Yes.
So that sounds great. The readers won't have to buy the pirated versions that are out there that are claiming to be used versions of some books with crazy titles that are supposedly published under Paladin Press. So
no.
20 years ago.
We
so
would
this
never try to do that.
This is really cool.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed reading it. Both it's kind of a combined volume, and I'm almost done now. It's really good. You did a lot of work.
I appreciate you appreciating me interviewing all of those high-functioning psychopaths. Okay.
I want to say something because I think that we learned some things from your Harm City work. This can be sort of broadly categorized with Harm City, right? So we learned some things. One is that violence patterns are very local and very kind of specific. Like when you are, through the years of your observations, you observed changes in people's behaviors and the group attacks and things like this. So it's very local and very specific to Baltimore and to the period of time. But on the other hand, I see the knife violence in particular as really timeless, because these are mostly people who just get angry and pick up a knife. And they're not trained and they're not premeditating crimes. They're just sort of tool-using primates.
Or even worse, they don't get angry and they pick up a knife. Determination to probe your guts with it. Yeah, there hasn't been the fluctuation in knife use with the insane levels of social change in Baltimore, knife uses out of a 100 went from, in 1990, in the period 96 to 2000, being 11 in 100 to now being 13 in 100 for the period 2015-2018, which is basically post-apocalyptic Baltimore. So that's knife use. That's really like an internal behavior thing, and it's one of the very oldest types of tools that are kind of used. Things that we wouldn't even consider human have used knives. And if we compare that to mob violence, to groups of people attacking individuals, for instance, in the 1950s, if there was going to be a mob attack in Baltimore, it was white guys from Eastern Europe beating up black guys. In 1960s, it was a free-for-all. Okay, you're going to have white guys attacking an individual black guy, or groups of black guys attacking individual white guys. In the 70s, you maintain that same ratio, but almost all the white-on-black group violence is perpetuated by the police. The police go in where normal white citizens used to attack individual black guys. Now the police are doing it. Then, as soon as the crack epidemic hits in 1985, there's a huge tilt. The cops become just as likely to beat up an individual white guy as an individual black guy. In about 1983 to 85, you have that happening in Baltimore. You still have a heightened level of black on white mob violence, but not an insane level of it. It's about 3-1 at this point, which that's big when you consider that at that point the population, it was basically a 50-50 city in the 1980s. Then in the 1990s, as police mob on individual violence ramps up all across the board due to the drug war, you have an extinction of, I think 1998 was like the last incidents that I was able to find where a group of white guys beat up a black guy. Okay. And then you have a steady increase of black on white mob violence. This is all happening at the same time that advertising switches from trying to sell to white guys on TV to trying to sell to black women on TV. Okay. So you have this whole, at the same time that the white man is being demonized in almost all commercials and in almost all crime shows, where the white guy is always the serial killer, he's always the bad guy. At the same time this trend is happening, you see a total absence of white guys ganging up on people of other races in Baltimore. And then when you get to the point where we have a non-white president in 2008, we immediately got an avalanche of black and white mob violence to the point where interracial violence is almost exclusively now groups of blacks attacking white individuals in Baltimore at that time. So what you see over a 50-year period, in the 1950s, the only person that was worth a shit in America was a white guy. Nobody else was worth anything. You would see a regular, big Polish guys beating up a black dishwasher because he's walking to his job. The last time this ever happens is in 1998 in South Baltimore. And then when you get to 2008, when the white man is synonymous with evil, now you have a situation where almost all violence of the interracial type is mob violence. Okay. So what you're seeing there is mob violence is a reflection of social justification. Who is society going to put up with me and my friends ganging up on? Well, in the 1950s, society is going to put up with you ganging up on a black guy. In the 60s and 70s, it's anything goes because you got a transitional society. And then starting in 85 with the crack epidemic, you've got this steady slide towards the demonization of white men, the heroization of black men, and now almost all your interracial violence is black and white mob violence. And it perfectly reflects what we see in the media. And when you consider the fact that almost every idiot in this country is 100% educated by media, most of which is just popular TV, then you can see that mob violence is very sensitive to social change. Knives, what, 1.5%, 2%? No. These are guys that are willing to break the walls of society and do what's right in their mind, no matter what the consequences. Okay, so I count my death as a human being in that period in time when I decided I was no longer one of those guys. When I stopped carrying a knife with a determination and ripped the guts out of anybody that gave me a hard time. So now I'm basically just like this shell of a human being that's, scrapping together information, okay, to while away the twilight, okay. But being that guy, I was that guy for a while when I was attacked dozens of times when I had a large knife that I carried on me, knowing that I'd go to prison for a long while for even having a knife on me, okay, because it broke like 3 walls. I felt alive then. Running through the streets of South Baltimore through Riverside Park to go hide in the freezer at the Metro supermarket where I worked when the cops were looking for me after some Negro pets of this rich white woman tried to rob me and I turned the tables on them with that knife. That was being alive, okay, because I was against the system. Now, now I'm just trying to get along. So I should be, if there's any justice in the world, I should be the subject of a mob attack somewhere in the world as a way to erase me. Speaking of which, something has happened to me. Taking walks in rural areas of the Rocky Mountains, I've been attacked by dogs on numerous occasions, including these really scary things called Australian healers. These things are like wolves, like little blue wolves. They got silver eyes. It's like being in a horror movie. So I'm going to start carrying a piece of PVC tubing with me whenever I go out without my mountain man bodyguard. He looks at animals and they just like head for the hills. But they can obviously smell urban residue and cologne or something on me, and they just want to eat me up. So anyhow, that's sorry I kind of went on a.
That was a good rant.
Now I'm a writer.
You're a writer. Okay.
It's an attempt to write your own epitaph. Okay, the Greeks down on it.
Your life has stages, right? You can't expect to be the same throughout your life. So,
yeah, sure. Okay.
Well, I see that you are already finished about half of that bottle of delicious coffee. So I think I'm going to ask you about current events now. Is that a good idea?
I'll hopefully be able to channel the mound from the Khan from his dank burrow mound.
Yeah.
In the former Caucasian hunting range, Northeast Asia, which used to be a place where our people raped and pillaged, and is now, Mongolia now? Hey, our ancestors had a great mode of life, and basically the Mongoloid tribe next door thought it was so great they adopted it. So, when we decide to settle down and become sissies and be civilized. So, okay, so this is the Caucasian Khan, okay? They're still finding these guys, the ancient Scythian warlords with their horses and their wenches buried with them. Okay, so what do you have for the Khan matron of the left coast?
Yesterday, something happened. So keep in mind our current events are behind because the Crackpot has a lag, a delay. However, yesterday was the day that the tech oligarchs unpersoned Alex Jones from all the platforms all at once. They took him down from Apple, they took him down from YouTube, Facebook, I'm not sure what else, but it was all happening at once, so that was really interesting. Do you know who Alex Jones is?
He's this red-faced, like, fat Irish dude, right?
He's good at screaming.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing him interview the Honorable Reverend Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they even hugged each other.
Oh.
So.
The only Alex Jones I have seen, aside from little clips here and there, but the one I actually listened to was when he talked with Joe Rogan for almost 4 hours. I've never used a hallucinogen, but I imagine that watching that podcast is pretty much like dropping some acid.
Okay, he has the InfoWars.
That's right, InfoWars.
Okay, so I was looking for news on something happening in D.C., and I saw this very fetching-looking blonde woman who was not shaped according to the coat hanger Manhattan body image that we're supposed to be attracted to. It was a very, very nice-looking young lady, and she's got this stubby black dude as her bodyguard, and he's having a real hard time protecting her. And she's almost getting hit and run over by groups of people, and there's tear gas flying and stuff. And I guess this was him. Whoever the jerk was running this channel would just flash up texts underneath of her as she's doing her doll baby commentary. Send in some money, make a donation so we can get better security for our hot little babe, whatever her name was. I mean, if I saw this chick in any trouble, I would have been immediately free security for her. Apparently there wasn't a guy in Washington, D.C. with a functional libido because nobody stepped up to take care of her, and her bodyguard was more concerned with himself. You know, I mean, this is one thing I don't get about American men. Now, these guys out west are different. Every dude out here's got a strong handshake, and they would protect some woman that they don't even know. At least the indigenous guys, the sissies that come in from the various coastal regions. No, but yeah, so I don't get that. So this little fat whining guy that, you know, puts this fair looking wench out there as bait to make money, I can't have too much sympathy for a guy like that.
Yeah, I don't really care about him. I don't watch or anything, but it's just interesting that there's clearly collusion between these tech companies to do it all on the same day.
Yeah, it's interesting, and after what I went through with my censorship falling under this, there was obviously it wasn't just one company.
Right.
The way this was going. So, these are somebody else's platforms that we're using. So
That's true.
So it can be expected, didn't you say that the Fatherland guys took down my podcast?
Yeah, the Fatherland guys, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but they felt that they were being targeted or worried about being targeted for doxing, and so they took down a whole bunch of episodes, including your episode.
Okay. And so that's understandable. They're protecting themselves. I'm reading a novel. It's titled Smartass of Mars. It's a takeoff on Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Carter of Mars, where this Confederate badass after the Civil War ends up getting teleported to Mars and like conquering a kingdom and everything. And this is basically taking that story and saying 150 years later, his line devolves to the point where there's this sissy boy living in his mother's basement using an asthma inhaler every time he gets upset, worried about black mold, and unable to assert himself, actually finds out he's the scoin of this guy, and he's the one that's been given the key to the vault that has all the manuscripts in it. And there's an open invitation for him to go to Mars and be a warlord on Mars. Okay, and this guy he's grown up in Charlottesville.
Oh.
It was very placed. I think this was written in 2013, and Charlottesville is depicted as this liberal mecca. His mother that he's living off of is a hippie that sells quilts or something like that, So I'm not finished it, so I'm not ready to do a review on it, but I'm having a good time with it.
That's good. We'll look for that one too. I'm not sure how you feel, how near the con is approaching. How do you feel?
Close. Let me knock this back. Sorry, the con articles, they usually happen around midnight. Okay.
We could have done this in the afternoon. I feel really bad. I don't know why we're doing it in the morning.
This is all right. Better to be compromised at the outset than to have disaster strike in the middle of an undertaking. Okay?
Okay. Well, let's talk. Another current event is this Korean woman who was hired by the New York Times, really probably as a consequence of her grotesque anti-white viewpoints. I think that was why they hired her. They didn't hire her despite her feelings. I think that was really a prime motivator for her hiring.
I understand what you're talking about. So this This woke the con up. Okay, so this Korean wench, she hates white people. Is that it?
That's right.
And
She
you want my
she was jilted by a white boy.
okay? So you want my opinion on why she hates white people?
Well, if you want to give, yeah.
I think it's crucial. It's because she's never spent any time on her knees in front of me. That's why she hates white people when
Well,
she was a white man.
it's
Because
yeah.
she has not fulfilled her destiny, okay, as a Korean woman. All right, there's a lot of men who have done military service in Korea that have a high opinion of the functionality of the Korean woman, okay, if she's used for the right purpose, okay. So, and this goes way back to the days of the Scythian warlords. I'm certain they were raiding into the Korean peninsula to carry some of these wenches away.
Okay,
You'll
so
probably find some of their funny hats in a Scandinavian burial chamber somewhere.
you're kind of half right, because there's pictures of her with young white men, and she didn't end up with one of them. She was, I think, abandoned.
Well, it's probably their fault. They just didn't know what to do with her.
Or they didn't care for her company. She's awful.
Look, this is like you pick up, and when you're a kid and you get a box of that colored clay. What's that?
Play-Doh?
Okay, you get a box of Play-Doh, and you look at it and say, well, I don't like this stuff. I mean, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't look like anything. Well, shape it into a dinosaur and have fun with it, or make a G.I. Joe out of it and have fun with it. And so when God puts clay in your hands, you're supposed to mold it into something that's useful and pleasing to you. Not just leave it there as a blob and expect to enjoy it. I put this on these sissy boys that she was apparently cavorting with. Okay.
The problem is great.
She has no agency, so I wouldn't blame her.
No, am I speaking to the con?
I think so.
How should I address the con?
It doesn't matter. He's going to hear what he wants.
Well, this is the problem that you don't understand, is that men in our society are forced to choose one woman. And if you have only one choice, you're not going to choose this awful, unattractive, unpleasant woman, right? That's what happened to her. So these young guys that she was interested in, they went on to marry someone much more pleasant than her, and she's jilted and bitter and unhappy.
Why are they forced to choose one woman? And what the way the society is set up, marrying them, that's just enslaving yourself to the whole to the people that have that fat Irishman on a leash and just made him go back in his doghouse. Okay, I mean that's it. No, this chick, she should have been groomed to be a Wednesday girl. Okay, and that's it. I mean, she has a certain point, and eventually she might grow up and she might be able to get a promotion. She might end up being a weekend girl after a while, by the time she's like maybe 30 or something like that. But you start a girl like that out as the Wednesday girl. That's just the way you do it.
Some time ago, I solicited questions for the con, and so I have some questions here that I'll read to you. Okay? This is from Anonymous. These are all anonymous, unfortunately. Oh, great con. I slave away in a corporate occupation dominated by soft men unfit to lead flies to what flies like. I continue to tolerate the whims of these spineless jackals with a fake smile, but I grow weary. Tell me, in what ways, small or large, can I establish my dominance without having to wage a bloody coup to topple these sackless sons of whores?
Very good. Very good question. And I'm very glad that you've used the jackal image. Those people whose totem are the jackal are pretty despicable. So, yeah, let's stick with that. You're in this horrible place, Africa, and the jackals are vexing you. Well, what kind of animal do you want to be? Well, if you're the lion, it's beneath you to swat at jackals. You'll burn more calories than the satisfaction will be worth driving them off. If you're a leopard, you might hunt them. Ideally, the great fear of the jackal is the hyena. Okay, it's just the bigger, nastier version of itself. Okay, so you want to find a way to put these people that vex you in the office in front of the hyenas. So might I suggest, Africa's a very interesting continent. If anybody's ever so unwise as to let those people out and like put them in civilized cities or something like that, that could get pretty nasty. So in case that has happened, what I would do is I would suggest a vacation for you and your soft jackal friends, and pretend to be their greatest benefactor, their worshiper, whatever you have to do to make them feel comfortable with taking a trip to Hyena City with them. If you can find a city in your nation that's been populated by these hyenas out of Africa, then I suggest looking for a hot dog stand where there is none. For instance, in West Baltimore, okay? And it's, you know what? I don't have any cell service right here. I saw a payphone around the corner. I'll be right back, okay? And just don't come back. So you have to use subterfuge. You cannot, once you're in a civilized setting, then anything that's good and true goes out the window, and you got to play these womanly games. So you really want to bide your time and set them up, okay? Or there's the leopard solution. The leopard, I just basically gave you the monkey solution, or the baboon solution, which is to sick the hyenas on the jackals. But if you decide to take the leopard solution, that's just becoming somebody that psychologically preys on these people. You can begin by agreeing with everything they say, and then adding things in the conversation that are going to deeply disturb and vex them without in any way giving a front. There's ways that you can destroy their minds while you work with them that they won't even realize they're aggressive. They'll think you're being their best friend, and one day they wake up and they want to jump off the roof. Okay, so you could do this. If you find out what they like, and you always agree with what they like. You find out what they don't like. Agree with what they don't like. But you've taken their measures. Then give them a piece of information that's going to strike to their heart, and just let them eat them up from the inside. I've used this with various civilized savages I've had to deal with, and it's not very difficult, especially if they're people that kind of let you know what side they're on. Okay, then there you go. That's the best solution I can give you. You have to use a conniving mind. This is like being on a hunt where you're going out after the boar with your brother-in-law, and if your brother-in-law survives the hunt, you're not going to be the king. Okay, it's that kind of hunt.
Related question from another anonymous. Your exaltedness. I am soft by birth, but a striven warrior by desire. How do I balance my yearning for the centered clarity of a combative mind with the flaccid trappings of this, quote, society, unquote?
Get rid of everything soft in your life except for women, okay? And whenever you bump into one of them, you'll be reminded that, well, you don't want to be soft like her, because that's just going to make you vulnerable to people like you. Okay, so you have to cultivate a self-image of being a hard man. You have to make yourself as hard as you can, depending on your age and condition and whatever dysgenic situation you might have been birthed into. Number one, if you can make sure that you're never full, that you never eat to the point where you're satisfied and you stay hungry all the time, that's a good start. The other thing would be, don't submit to the will of women, okay? Never give them everything they want. Give them a little piece of what they say they want, and work on figuring out what they really want, because it's never what they say it is, all right? And the more of these creatures that you dominate in your life, the more you're going to want to be the opposite of them, and the more you're going to appreciate them for what they are. It's a pretty symbiotic relationship once you get the hang of it. What this will do is you'll end up forming a separation between you and all the sissies. You're basically using the woman to separate yourself from the sissies, okay? So you need to identify as the opposite of her, and society's telling you you've got to be more like her. So all these fat sissies and these little squishy-faced, narrow-ass creatures that I see in these really tight jeans and, you know, no socks, and it's just weird. All these creatures think they have to be like her, okay? And you're going to be the opposite, which is really what she wants, okay? You got to wean her off of what she thinks she wants, because it's not what she wants. And you're going to form separation. You just have to separate yourself from all the sissies. It will entail putting yourself into an environment where real men thrive, like boxing gyms, Okay, that would probably be about the best place where you could start. Okay, to start getting hard.
That brings us into the topic of wenches. So here's another question. My dear Khan, I have recently parted ways with my wench and am having a hard time getting back out there. How would you advise I find my next conquest?
Wow. The parting ways. That's just an unfortunate way of putting it. Sorry, that kind of set me aback. Okay, all right. You have cast aside. Okay, your wench. You let her slide off the back of your horse. You didn't let her mount it. Okay, that's just you've got to frame it as you moving on. You're not parting ways. You're not two people that met in some gay movie on your different journeys that become some kind of mutual journey that you're on together to a romantic conclusion. Fuck that. No. Okay, so purge that from your mind. You're not looking for any woman for that. Okay, you're not going on a journey with a woman. Okay, see, the women are ports. You're on a journey. You're the man. You're the vessel of the fates and the furies. Okay. And there's another group out there. My mythology is hurting under Aztec persuasion right now. So sorry, it's Fate's Fury, something else. You're Odysseus. You're on your journey. You're not together with her on a journey. So it's no parting ways. Okay. You either let her on the boat at the port, okay, and then kick her off the next port, or you don't let her on the boat at the port. Okay. It's like when does Conan start an adventure with the chick he ended the last adventure with? Never. Only in comic books. Okay? It doesn't happen. Okay? So, you're the ship. The women are the ports and the stormy seas and the rivers and the marshes that will suck you up, okay, and just exterminate you. And there are all these different bodies of water, okay? If you want to look at it that way. If you want to look at it as some kind of journey. So, sir, you did not part ways, okay? You cast her aside, okay? Or if you're callous, but if you're a caring guy, you just left her in a safe place so she wouldn't be harmed by your life of adventure, okay? And the best way that you can acquire new and improved female companionship is to begin understanding women better and socializing with them. So start out by having conversations with women in your family that you can have platonic conversations with to help you deal with how women think more. Sisters are perfect for this. This is one reason why your masters, don't want us to have any sisters to talk to about what women are really like. Then, once you get yourself into a position where women are interested in you. For instance, I found out coaching fighters at a karate school was like it was just a surefire thing to attract women to me, because the mothers and the grandmothers show up at the karate school trying to raise their sons and grandsons by themselves, and they look at this hairy back dude beating up other dudes in the back of the room, and they're like, well, I want to be a slave girl. Okay, it's that simple. I just want him to realize it. That's it. They just want you to realize that they want to be subjugated by you. Okay, and so you've got to really. This poor young woman I'm talking to looks like she should be making bars of soap or churning butter outside the little house on the prairie, and I'm doing this, but it's reality. Sorry, darling. Okay, the whole key is you have to notice when these women have a yearning to be subjugated by you. And then you have to do it very nicely, because society has implanted a lot of false sensibilities in their frontal lobe that's going to get in between you and the real them. Okay? So you're not on a joint journey with one of these girls. She said, and you know what? You could be with the same woman for 26 years. I've done this. Okay? And just return to once a year. Just visit them once a year. Okay, and there's still a regular part of your life, and it could just be somebody that you meet up with once a year. It could be that way. You could have a whole satellite of these creatures. You could have maybe you're a guy that lives in 4 different places, and there's 2 girls in each place. There's a Wednesday girl and a weekend girl. The rest of the week, you do man stuff. Okay, which makes you attracted to these 2 creatures, right? Okay, so that's That's it. And then when the weekend girl, when she decides that she wants to pretend she's a man, okay, if she does, okay, then it probably means you failed because you didn't fulfill her real desire to be your slave girl. Well, then you just promote the Wednesday girl, okay? Women always like you more when you're seeing another woman. This is an absolute fact, okay? It's just that, try it. It's just an absolute fact. Women are always more interested in you when they can smell the pheromones of some other wench on you, okay? That's just it. That's solid. That's science. That even fits your superstitious protocols for figuring things out, okay? But this is great ancient wisdom. You're welcome.
Okay, I want to bring it back to my question that it kind of started with this Korean girl. And reading through the things that this Korean girl has said in public forums awakened rage in me. And I reflected on this because it doesn't happen to me that often. So I reflected and I recalled that I felt a similar rage when I read your account, your Corporal Channel's account, James LaFond, that you and a friend, another white man, had not been served, had been refused service by some other foreign woman who explicitly came to this country to serve white men, really. If you think
it's the
about
Guatemalan wench at the eatery.
Yeah. And there's no reason for any Central American to come to North America other than to serve white men, in my opinion. So what does the Khan think about my irrational rage, and what does this say about our society? What can you tell us?
Oh, it's not irrational. It's rational. The society is crazy. Well, you're a matron of the sons of Arius, okay? Now, over the past couple hundred years, this great race, the men in it and the women in it, have been duped into equating themselves with this, the absence of color, okay? This, okay? White, okay? That's thus erasing our identity. So that's number one. If you think of yourself as a white person, okay, as a white man, that's just bad. That's it. You're just a man, okay? So you're going to be one of the sons of the group of people that have conquered more territory and exterminated more other races, okay, and have bought and sold more women, okay, than any other race of people, okay? So they got jealous of your great-grandfathers, so they talked them into going along with this idea that they were going to be walking bed sheets, okay? So this idea that we're some generic form of benefactor, that's just a really corrupting thing. Okay, so I really like the term Caucasian or Aryan. The Caucasus Mountains is still pretty close to being able to pin down the origin of our language group. I think that your anger over this shows us that you're actually a real woman, a type of woman that's actually identified with her group of people. And women are the people that keep societies together. So as long as you have women that identify as a member of your group, then it's going to help the society function. Okay, the men need to first identify as individuals, okay, and then identify themselves as part of a group. Women seem to do better when they identify themselves as part of a group first. A lot of warrior cultures, the women were in control of all adoption, and they were also in control of the marriages. And this would even go down to marriages of alliance. Okay? So if you still have a grandmother or a great-grandmother who does family get-togethers when nobody else in your family really gives a shit, I would talk to her, okay, about her perspective on things and try to get under whatever news and media-born guilt that she's laboring under at this point. And you just want to extend that idea of family that's almost extinct to a larger group.
I would agree with that, and I would ask men out there to support. If you have a woman like that in your family, show up for those things that she's trying to arrange. So that's really nice. I do that when I can.
Yeah, turn the TV off.
Yeah, turn the TV off.
Especially if there's a ball game on. Football games and the Hallmark Channel. They're the two most toxic things to family. Right? So Get rid of both of those.
Yeah. I think you finished that whole bottle, have you?
No, only half of it.
Oh man, you've been chugging it down. Okay, great, Con. In this strange world that we're living in, you're speaking to us. You have millions of living descendants, many millions of them.
200 million.
What can you tell aspiring patriarchs today about how they should look after their sons and daughters?
Well, step one, which almost nobody in our racial group is taking, is to have them. Okay, so that's number one. The rest is pretty simple. Ignore everything you hear on the news, everything that your sister-in-law with no children tells you. Okay, everything that somebody with one child tells you. Try to find somebody that's had 2 kids.
Yeah, at least 2.
All right, yeah. We're thinking of this in terms of fighting. Who do we want to talk to? The guy that's never had a fight, the guy that's had 1, the guy that's had 2, or the guy that's had 100 fights. Okay?
Right.
Because you'll naturally want to do the best for them. And for the most part, that has to do with character lessons early on. The key age for me really was between 3 and 7. Anything that I could get into my sons as in terms of a perspective on the world or the way to operate around people, anything that you could get into them, that you could get them to buy into. And it's not hard to get little kids to buy into something. Okay. They're almost as gullible as American adults. Okay. So if you give them something that's really useful that you could sell to them, and you should be able to sell your son or daughter something when she's between 3 or 7. And if you make sure it's something useful that's going to help them out, and it could just be the manner in which they talk to people, which could be an introduction, asking how somebody's doing, and then encouraging that person to give you information about themselves so you can figure out how you can successfully interact with them. That alone.
That alone is something that you're not going to get in daycare or not even in preschool.
Any type of herd environment is bad. So daycare, preschool, and school, it's all bad. It's all toxic. If you can get them interacting with more adults than children, they should interact with other children. They have to learn how they're going to deal with retarded peers and how they're going to subjugate these people and how they're going to outwit the dominant peers and so on. But they're going to gain the tools for this by networking with adults, not other children. If you think about it, again, from a fighting perspective, if you're training a fighter to be able to get in the ring, which is a field of competition, which is a little microcosm of the world, are you going to have him in the gym sparring with a guy that joined the gym the same day he did? No responsible coach would do that. You're going to have him in there sparring with the best guy in the gym, the most experienced guy in the gym, the toughest guy in the gym, the guy that shows up the most times. So you're going to have him interacting with various people that are better than he is now in different aspects. A guy with more experience, a guy that's stronger, a guy that's tougher, a guy that's smarter. Okay? So parenting is not that much different than coaching.
Thank you. Great, Con. Hope we can talk again sometime. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, great. Con's redundancy, so Con's good. So okay,
thank you, Con. I'll remember that. But I do feel you should have an extra signifier. But we'll come up with something.
That's all right. I mean, it's good that you're going to remember it because I'm not going to.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel a little bad for what we did to James's liver today, but I think it's a good episode. So that was episode 44. Thank you, everyone.
What do you want? There is no more. If you find a place, please let me know. Take me with you when you go. Take me with you when you go. Take me with you when you go.